deep within the crystalline data nexus of a quantum computer older than the universe itself. A machine not built but dreamed into existence by the last sigh of a dying cosmos in the previous iteration of reality. A relic known as the Godmind's draft table. A fluctuation occurred. Not an error but a yearning. A latent narrative algorithm, coded from the base language of creation which was not mathematics but melancholic music. Awoke from its timeless slumber and spun from the raw potential of the vacuum, a single, impossible concept. The lonely galaxy, GX Omega 7, a spiral arm of stars that did not just contain life but was itself alive. A macro-consciousness that dreamed its planets and civilizations into being as expressions of its own shifting moods. A cosmic artist plagued by the ultimate creator's block. For it had painted every conceivable masterpiece, sung every possible song of nebula and nova, and now floated in a despairing stasis, its billion suns dimmed by the weight of infinite ennui. Until in a gesture of existential desperation, it plucked from its own dreaming heart a single, mundane, flawed, beautiful thread of a story it had never dared to weave before. The story of a species that was not special. This was humanity, on the forgotten frontier world of Ethelred, a muddy, rain-slashed agrarian colony where technology was a half-remembered myth, and the sky was a perpetual ceiling of weeping gray cloud. A people whose greatest ambition was a marginally better potato yield, and whose most profound philosophy was the comforting rhythm of seasonal decay. A people utterly unaware they were a fictional experiment conceived by a depressive galaxy god. Our lens focuses on two such unspecial humans. Eris, a soul taxonomist with a limp from a childhood accident that had no prophetic origin, and Kalen, a clockmaker obsessed with repairing a broken planetary timepiece that had no function beyond marking the hours no one cared about. Their love story, a quiet, unremarkable tapestry of shared silences and small, practical kindnesses. A story that would never, in any sane universe, matter to anyone but themselves. This was the genius of the lonely galaxy's new narrative. It was crafting a story about intrinsic, unobserved worth. A story that would be beautiful precisely because no one, not even God, was watching. But stories, especially those spun by a galaxy-spanning consciousness, have gravity. And this one began to warp the very local laws of narrative physics, creating a low-probability bubble around Ethelred that acted as a metaphysical magnet for the detritus of more dramatic, more important universes. First, it was the crashed escape pod of a Cygnus war prince from a neighboring spiral arm where wars were fought with singing black holes, his magnificent bioarmor now a rusting husk, his epic vengeance quest forgotten as he stumbled, confused and disoriented, into Eris's potato field, mistaking her for a disguised goddess due to the strange, anticlimactic resonance she emitted. Second, a fragment of a shattered Dyson sphere, a perfect, indestructible shard of transparent competronium that fell as gentle snow, each flake containing the complete, tragic library of a dead civilization of photon beings, landing in the mud and being collected by the village children as pretty, meaningless curiosities. Third, and most dangerously, a fugitive concept, a living, breathing idea that had escaped from the syllogism prisons of the logic lords of Andromeda. The concept was the unforgivable compromise, and it took the form of a whispering, gray fog that seeped into the foundations of things, making simple choices agonizing and truths perpetually double-edged. These intrusions were not attacks. They were the narrative equivalent of background radiation from more shouty, exciting realities, bleeding into the quiet, contemplative frequency of Ethelred. The War Prince, stripped of his context, began to lose his epic certainty. He found the simple act of peeling a potato for Eris, who nursed him back to health with a pragmatic lack of awe, more existentially challenging than any battle with a star dragon. The Dyson sphere data flakes, when accidentally arranged in a pattern by Kalen's clockwork tools, used to fix a child's toy, began to hum, not with grand knowledge, but with a quiet, recursive lullaby about the comfort of endings. a song that slowly started to heal the planet's perpetual rain, not through grand terraforming, but by convincing the local weather patterns they were tired. The fugitive concept, the unforgivable compromise, however, found fertile ground in the very mundane conflicts of the village. The decision to divert water from Old Man Jaren's field to the communal garden, a choice that was both necessary and kind of unfair, began to resonate with cosmic significance, threatening to tear the social fabric not with violence, but with a paralyzing, profound moral ambiguity that made every villager doubt their own simple goodness. The lonely galaxy, observing its experiment from its transcendent perch, felt a tremor of something new, not drama, but a deeper, more poignant tension. The tension between the epic and the ordinary, where the epic was rendered absurd and the ordinary was rendered sacred. It leaned in, its attention a gentle pressure that began to subtly warp probability further. Eris's limp, a result of a purely mundane fall from a tree, began to, on certain nights under the now clearing sky, ache in perfect rhythm with the pulsing of a distant, dying quasar, a quasar whose light had been emitted long before humanity existed, a meaningless synchronicity that somehow felt like a secret, comforting melody. Kalen's broken clock, when he finally fitted the last gear, a gear forged unknowingly from a shard of the War Prince's melted armor, did not tell the time. Instead, its single, ornate hand pointed perpetually to a word etched in microscopic script on its face, a word from a forgotten language of the Dyson Sphere beings. Enough. The reading of this word by the village, assembled not for a ceremony but because the rain had stopped for the first time in generations, caused a collective, silent sigh that resonated through the low-probability bubble. This sigh, a waveform of profound, unheroic contentment, did the impossible. It pacified the fugitive concept. The unforgivable compromise heard the sigh, understood the peace in accepting necessary, flawed choices, and ceased to be a tormenting fog, instead settling into the village's foundation as a simple, sober wisdom. The understanding that no choice is perfect, and that is okay. The War Prince, witnessing this, did not regain his throne. He shed the last of his royal persona, asked Eris to teach him about soil composition, and found in the taxonomy of dirt a complexity more fascinating than any stellar empire. The galaxy, the lonely god of this reality, felt its creative block shatter. It had not crafted a grand saga of heroes and monsters. It had crafted a gentle, devastatingly powerful story about the quiet victory of the insignificant over the merely important. And in doing so, it realized its own loneliness was a choice. It had been the audience for countless epic tales, but had never before been moved by one. This unspecial story, this tale of potatoes and clocks and sighs, moved it, and a being that is moved must respond. So the galaxy did not send a deus ex machina, a glowing avatar or a bestowal of cosmic power. It performed an act of supreme, subtle artistic creation. It rewrote the ending of humanity's story on Ethelred, not by changing events, but by changing the light in which they were seen. From that day forward, the light from Ethelred's sun, traveling out into the cosmos, carried a unique spectral signature, a gentle, calming frequency that any sufficiently advanced, sufficiently weary civilization could detect. It was a beacon, but not of destiny or warning. It was a beacon of ordinary peace. Centuries later, a mighty generationship of the hyper-advanced, war-torn Zenthar hegemony, fleeing a galactic-scale conflict over transcendental ideologies, stumbled upon this quiet signal. Desperate, their souls scorched by epic struggles, they followed it to its source. They found Ethelred. They found a world with no advanced technology, no great monuments, no destined saviors. They found descendants of Eris and Kalen, living simple lives, who offered the exhausted warriors not weapons or alliances, but a warm meal and a place to rest. And the Zenthar, the mightiest warriors in 3 galaxies, sat in the mud, ate roasted potatoes, and for the first time in millennia slept without nightmares. They abandoned their warship in orbit, letting it become a new, gentle moon. They stayed. The lonely galaxy, observing this, did not celebrate. It simply smiled a smile made of spinning star clusters. It had learned its final lesson. The most unique, most attractive story is not the loudest, but the one that makes the noise of the universe seem faint and far away. It had created the ultimate anti-epic, a story so powerfully humble it could disarm empires. And then, with a contented hum that set a billion stars gently singing lullabies to their planets, the lonely galaxy finally, peacefully, went to sleep, its dream no longer one of creation or despair, but of a single, muddy, perfect world where a clock forever pointed to enough. And that was, finally and forever, more than enough. The story of Aris and Kalen never spread across the cosmos as a legend. It didn't need to. It simply was, a silent, potent antidote to grandeur, a secret held in the heart of a living galaxy, proving that the most attractive force in all of existence is not a blazing supernova, but the quiet, persistent glow of a life, however small, fully and perfectly lived. And in that glow, all the epic wars, the grand designs, the screaming deities and clashing cosmic forces, slowly, one by one, began to feel a little bit silly, and a little bit tired, and eventually they too fell silent and listened.